The darkness in the alley had no shape. It was just a cold, silent void. A kind of darkness no one wants to stare into. But for a shepherd like Valor, it was the last place where life still clung. Blood pooled and spread across the cold tiles. Each dragging step left a trail of pain. His body was exhausted. Every muscle no longer felt like his own, yet the fire in his eyes had not gone out. A light breeze swept by, carrying the scent of trash, cigarettes, and the traces of people who had just left. In Valor's muddled mind, everything blurred together, as if the present and the past were bleeding into one another. He could hear, echoing in his ears, the familiar roar of engines, the smell of gunpowder, explosions tearing the air apart, then someone's voice shouting. Not the voice of violence, but someone who once called him by name, praised him every time he followed a command. "Stay!" The voice rang in his memory, as clear as if it were just moments ago. "Guard!" That short command he'd obeyed for so many years. But now, in the suffocating darkness of a narrow alley, there was no one left to give orders. Only confusion, fear, and the stabbing pain slicing through his thin chest remained. Blood still oozed from his side. Every breath was a knife inside him. His hind legs cramped, dragging behind by sheer force of will. Valor was used to pain. Training under the sun, wounds from drills. Times he fell, but always got back up. But tonight's pain was different. It was more than the body. It was memories stolen, the feeling of being abandoned, of no longer being needed. There was something in his chest that hurt more than any bruise, a cold emptiness stretching from his heart to his throat. Suddenly footsteps echoed somewhere. Valor stopped, ears, though bloodied, still twitching, trying to listen. Instinct still told him to tell sounds apart. These weren't the rushed steps of a pursuer, nor the hard, threatening tread of a stranger. In his haze, a fragile hope stirred, as if his old master was coming back. But his battered mind warned him not to trust too easily. He shrank into the corner of a peeling wall. From there, Valor could watch without being seen. Each ragged breath, every time he closed his eyes, memories flooded back. A strong arm that once stroked his fur, a silver collar shining in the sun, soft laughter, and a promise. "You'll never be alone, little one." But now, aside from the cold, only the instinct to survive remained. Valor did not collapse. His eyes stayed wide, defiant in the darkness, refusing to surrender. Though his body was falling apart, though every effort made the blood flow more, he dragged himself toward the faint light, toward the footsteps, toward the fragile hope that, somewhere, someone might need him one more time. In that moment, standing on the thin line between life and death, no one realized that inside a thin, dirty little dog, a fierce survival instinct was still burning. A small flame that had never gone out. The fire of loyalty, of loving memory, and of a silent wish. To belong to someone again, to hear his name, and to know once more where he belongs. The Tucson night remained cold and endless, but in that corner of the alley, a small soul still fought on. That was Valor, the dog who refused to bow to fate. The sounds of Tucson at night had nearly faded to silence. Only the wind moved through the alleys, rattling old plastic bags and scraps of newspaper, carrying them off like shredded memories. On that dirty, cold ground, Valor had reached his limit. But just as the darkness seemed ready to swallow everything, footsteps echoed. Neither fast nor loud, but with the steady rhythm of someone long familiar with pain. Elias Monroe, a soldier who had walked through the fire of battle, stepped out of his memories and into the darkness of reality. He hadn't chosen this alley on purpose. Perhaps it was instinct, wound in his heart that had never healed, that drew him toward the faint sound, weak noise, easily lost in the wind, but reaching the deepest corners of a soul that had known loss. A streetlight shone across Elias's shoulders, casting a long, unyielding shadow on the ground. In front of him, beneath a pile of trash and a peeling wall, was a creature he knew better than most. A shepherd, bones jutting, fur matted with blood and dirt, eyes wide in the darkness with a strange resilience. With just a glance, Elias knew. This dog had survived more than most dogs ever would. Valor shrank back on instinct. Deep in his eyes, fear and self-defense flickered. But still, something fierce remained. Unyielding. His ears, though bloodied, tried to listen. Every trembling muscle fought to hold a posture that wouldn't surrender easily. He knew that, in the darkest night of his life, this human's presence might mean salvation or new danger. Elias saw that. He stopped, keeping his distance. He understood. Not every wounded creature wants to be helped. But there was something in those eyes, in the darkness, that softened him. No longer a soldier, just a man, meeting the gaze of a fellow being in pain. For a moment, time stretched thin. Elias knelt slowly, not rushing. He set down his travel bag, removed his gloves, and gently extended both hands, palms up, toward Valor, a wordless promise not to harm. He spoke, his voice hoarse but gentle. "Hey, it's all right. I'm here to help you." Valor looked at him, those deep eyes seeming to pierce through every defense, as if trying to read the truth from the human soul in front of him. He'd seen people say sweet words, only to show cruelty. His legs trembled, pain crashing in waves. But in a sudden spark, he recognized that this voice was different. No command, no threat, no contempt. Only empathy. Distant memories surged back. A young man's hand ruffling his fur, a gentle compliment after every job well done, days of sun-drenched training, cold nights warmed by a strong embrace. But that person was gone, leaving behind a loneliness that felt endless. Somewhere inside, Valor's K9 instincts remained, beneath all the pain. Exhausted, he tried to push himself up, front legs locking, forcing himself to sit upright. The sit-wait posture he'd been trained for. His blood-caked fur bristled, but his eyes stayed locked on Elias, flickering with both caution and the faintest hope. Elias did not hurry. He sat down on the cold ground, facing Valor. "What have you been through, kid?" His voice trembled with emotion, not just pity, but the ache of a man who had been through too much. His eyes, gray, worn by loss, now shimmered with tears. Their eyes met. In that instant, two souls recognized each other in the dark, each seeing the scars and resilience in the other. Elias saw, in the dog's eyes, a will that refused to die, a yearning to live, to trust again, just as he had once searched for that hope amid the ruins of war. And Valor, with everything left of his loyalty and memory, every instinct honed over the years, did not look away. In his rapid, pained breaths, he waited for a sign, even just a look, that he hadn't been completely abandoned by fate. Elias carefully reached out, touching Valor's head. In that moment, Valor's whole body tensed in fear, then slowly relaxed. The warmth from Elias's hand seeped through dirty, bloody fur, down to aching skin, bringing with it a strange trust. No bark, no growl, just shared breath and a fragile spark in the darkness. Elias slowly wrapped his arms and lifted the dog gently, but with purpose. Valor let himself be held, body softening in a stranger's arms, as if he knew, if this was his last chance, he would not refuse it. In Elias's eyes, old pain returned. Memories of comrades he couldn't save. The dog named Titan he lost years ago. He hugged Valor tightly, as if trying to hold on to a chance for redemption. "You're safe now. I won't leave you behind. I promise." The Tucson sky was still dark, but in that moment a light of compassion cut a small path through the thickest shadows. Two battered souls, two broken hearts. A former soldier, a dog who once was a warrior, had found each other at the lowest point of their lives. When Elias stepped out of the alley with Valor in his arms, The city slept on, unaware that a small miracle had just happened. 2 wounded souls had met their destiny, beginning a healing journey neither had dared to hope for. In Elias's arms, Valor lay silent, too drained to resist, with nothing left to fear. The soldier's steady fingers closed gently around the dog's thin, battered body, as if silently promising, "I'm not letting go." Under the flickering streetlights at the edge of the block, Elias pressed on, breathing hard, clutching the dog tightly while racking his brain for the route to the nearest veterinary clinic, still open at night. Despite the pain and exhaustion, Valor forced his eyes open, peering at the world sliding past outside those warm arms. His mind, drifting in and out, was a swirl of sensations and sounds, memories and reality bleeding together. When Elias laid him down on the back seat of his old car, Valor flinched at the slam of the door, only to slip away again when Elias's hand gently stroked the back of his neck, the same way his old handler once did, either in praise or comfort. The road from the alley to the boulevard was empty, but the city night was never truly silent. Suddenly, an ambulance siren blared at the next intersection, ripping through the darkness. In that moment, Valor's whole body seized up. His ears drooped, his head pressed into the seat, and a faint whimper escaped his throat. Not from physical pain, but as a deep-rooted reflex. This was the ingrained reaction of a dog raised in the world of urgent alarms and sirens, of warnings and chaos, from the battlefield to city streets. Elias noticed immediately. He glanced in the rearview mirror and saw Valor's wild, wide eyes filled with primal fear. Without hesitation, Elias reached back and placed a steady hand on the dog's head, thumb softly stroking the thick fur at his neck. Miraculously, with that single touch, Valor's body began to relax and his breathing slowed. The fragile trust kindled in that dark alley was reinforced, as if Valor understood that, with this man, he could rest easy, if only for a moment. The car rolled through deserted streets. Each time they bumped over a pothole, Valor shuddered but held back any howl or whimper. Elias was surprised. With injuries this severe, any other dog would be crying, even lashing out in panic. But Valor only clenched his body tighter, holding his head as high as he could, eyes never straying from Elias, watching his every move, as if waiting for instructions. Elias tried to soothe him with a simple command, unconsciously slipping into his old handler's tone. "Stay. Easy, boy." Immediately, Valor's ears dropped, his head pressed to the seat, front paws drawn in, a perfect picture of submission, the kind only seasoned working dogs would give. For a split second, relief flickered in Valor's eyes, as if he'd recognized a sliver of his lost past, a discipline etched into his bones. To the clinic, Elias felt a knot of worry and regret tighten inside him. Having trained and worked alongside K9s, he knew right away. This dog's reactions went far beyond simple survival. Valor showed a combination of fierce will and a willingness to submit, a deep trust shaped by experience. Not everyone could forge this in a dog, especially not one so broken and abused. When the car stopped outside the clinic, Elias opened the back door. Valor, exhausted, still tried to raise his head, ears alert. As Elias bent down to lift him again, Valor whimpered softly, lifting his eyes as if to ask, "Is it safe this time?" But at Elias's quiet nod, Valor let himself go limp, surrendering to the man's arms without a fight. With every hurried step, Elias felt the dog's weak heartbeat against his chest, the quick, shallow breaths, and the thick scent of dirty fur mixed with fresh blood. But what haunted him most wasn't the smell of blood or the wounds in the cold night. It was those eyes full of both grit and heartbreak, holding things that words could never reach. More and more, Elias realized, this was not just a victim. Valor had been a true warrior, a soul who had loved, who had believed in something greater than pain. even if now all that was left was a faint flicker in his gaze. And Elias knew, from this moment, his own life would never be the same again. Stepping through the glass door of Copper Canyon Animal Clinic in the middle of the night, Elias felt the blast of the air conditioning, tinged with disinfectant and the familiar musk of animals. He held Valor tight, the dog's faint heartbeat against his chest a steady reminder of the fierce will to live he'd just witnessed. The room was bathed in a gentle yellow glow, so peaceful it seemed to swallow pain, leaving only the empty spaces that could never be filled. Inside, a teenager with curly hair, wearing an oversized hoodie, was tidying up after a long shift. This was Juno, someone who knew what cold nights on the street felt like, who understood loneliness and fear. Juno looked up at the sound of the bell, brown eyes narrowing in worry at the sight before him. A weary man cradling a battered shepherd, fur matted with blood, eyes glazed and unfocused. "We need urgent help," Elias said hoarsely, almost more to himself than anyone else. Juno immediately led them into the back. As Elias laid Valor on the exam table, Juno froze for a moment, eyes darting between the wounds, the blood, and the dog's unblinking gaze. Just then, Dr. Geller entered, her silver hair tied back, hands in rubber gloves, eyes sharp and wordless. As Geller approached with her instruments, Valor shrank back, body trembling violently. A low whine escaped his throat, his eyes darted, his whole frame tensed and ready to defend, even licking his lips repeatedly, a sign of extreme stress in a dog who's suffered pain and betrayal. Juno hesitated, fearing the reflex of a cornered animal. But unlike every time before, this time, Valor did not bite, bark, or try to jump off the table. Elias locked eyes with the dog, resting a steady hand on his head, his voice softening. "It's all right. I'm here. You're safe now." The words rang out, calm and steady, not loud, not coddling, but more like a gentle command from a soul who had seen too much. Miraculously, Valor stilled. His legs still trembled, his back arched in defense, but with those words, peace returned. He lifted his head, eyes never leaving Elias, taking a deep breath, as if reminding himself this was a voice he could trust. Juno's eyes widened, glancing from Elias to Valor and back. He muttered, unable to hide his amazement. "I've never seen a dog like this before. A strange dog, and he listens to you after just meeting you." Dr. Geller nodded quietly, approaching with care, examining every wound on Valor's legs, side, ears, and neck. When she touched the fractured rib, Valor jerked, but only let out a small hiss. Bite, no resistance. Elias's firm hand on the dog's shoulder was both anchor and signal. "No one will hurt you while I'm here." Throughout the treatment, whenever Valor felt pain or fear, his eyes found Elias, seeking assurance, as if making sure this man would still be there, his last refuge. Those weren't the eyes of fear, but of longing. A soul that once trusted, was once betrayed, and now was offered one fragile chance more. Geller and Juno worked in rhythm, cleaning blood, disinfecting, and bandaging the battered body. Every time the doctor switched tools or moved, Valor looked to Elias first, waiting for a nod before allowing the stranger to continue. Juno noticed the look, feeling something indescribable inside. He realized the bond between this soldier and the dog hadn't started in this clinic. It was as if some invisible thread had always linked these two wounded souls. After more than half an hour of careful work, when things were finally under control, Geller looked at Elias, her expression softening. "He'll need to be monitored tonight. He's lost a lot of blood and his ribs are badly hurt, but his spirit is remarkable. Unusual." Elias nodded, settling in by the table, his hand never leaving Valor, his calm presence like a current running straight to the dog's heart. Juno tidied up the bandages, sneaking glances, curiosity getting the better of him. "Mister, were you ever a canine handler?" Elias just smiled, a small, sad smile, and answered with a look at Valor. Sometimes you don't have to say much, just be there, so someone knows they won't be left behind. In that small room, under the gentle light, 3 people and a dog, each carrying their wounds, connected through a thread of fragile trust, just strong enough to keep a soul from giving up in the long night. And Juno, though only a witness, could feel it clearly. Tonight, in the dog's eyes, a spark of hope had flickered to life once more. The clinic room stayed hushed after Valor's wounds were temporarily bandaged. Geller watched every movement of the dog, her hands hardened by years, gently checking the fur-caked neck. That's when, beneath the dark, matted hair, an old silver collar appeared. The fabric was frayed, and the buckle was stained the color of old brass. Juno leaned in, carefully lifting the fur to let the desk lamp's light fall across the collar. "This looks just like an old K9's collar," he murmured, a mix of curiosity and confusion in his voice. Geller turned the collar over thoughtfully. On the worn, faded fabric, the stitches were coming undone, and a string of nearly illegible numbers peeked through the dust of time. As Geller brushed her finger over the collar, Valor suddenly trembled and let out a strange whine. Not the howl of pain, but a sound tangled with confusion and longing. Elias heard the sound, and something clenched inside him. He reached out to softly stroke the dog's head, whispering, "It's okay. They're just checking. No one's going to take it away from you." Valor seemed to understand, his breath slowing, his eyes returning to Elias as if searching for a familiar anchor between distant memories and shaky reality. As Geller and Juno tried gently to remove the collar, Valor leaned his head toward Elias, tail curled tight beneath his body instead of wagging. Juno noticed. Every time he reached for an instrument, Valor flinched, but with a word from Elias, the dog regained control. It was nothing like any ordinary dog Juno had worked with before, especially not a dog who'd just met its new human less than a night ago. Then, as Geller tried to lift Valor's head to check his ears, Valor tensed, his eyes darkening with a flicker of fear. Almost unconsciously, Elias tapped a finger on the table and spoke in a low, clear tone, a command honed by years in the military. "Sit." It was instant. Valor lowered his haunches and sat, eyes locked on Elias. The movement was flawless, automatic, no hesitation, no stiffness, like a drill repeated 1,000 times. For a second, everyone froze. From Juno to Geller, each felt a chill at the perfect, uncanny reflex of this dog. No one spoke for several seconds. The way Valor obeyed the sit command wasn't like a family pet, nor any stray just rescued from the street. It was the response of a dog forged on the training ground, where discipline was breath and was life. Geller narrowed her eyes, watching carefully. "You served, didn't you?" Elias nodded, eyes never leaving Valor. "But I never trained this dog. It's just old instinct." Juno shook his head, both awed and uneasy. "It's strange. Even the best-trained pets won't listen to a new sit command the first time they hear it. Not like that." The air grew heavier as Geller turned back, pointing to the faded numbers on the collar, her voice serious. "I think this dog was once a special K9, and maybe someone's still looking for him." Valor looked up at Elias, and for a split second, it seemed a burden was lifted from his eyes. In that moment, he knew that by this man's side, he'd found a piece of the past, a memory, a command, a trust. And in that same instant, a vague unease crept into all 3 of their minds. This dog's true identity and the history he carried would not end with the wounds on his body. Outside the clinic, the night was unnaturally quiet, as if fate itself was watching every small movement in the room, waiting for something to be revealed. After the room quieted with the question of Valor's true identity, everyone slowly drifted off, leaving the night to its silence, a space to recover and listen to their thoughts. Elias sat beside a makeshift cot next to the exam table, eyes fixed on Valor. The dog now lying on a clean blanket, wounds tightly bandaged, head nudging against his shoulder as if searching for reassurance in a world still too strange. Juno dimmed the lights, leaving only a small lamp in the corner. He curled up in a chair, hugging his knees, never taking his eyes off the two unlikely teammates who had wandered into the night. The Tucson darkness pressed gently against the room, sometimes trembling with the whine of wind at the window. Just as everything seemed still, Valor began to twitch. Gentle tremors rippled through his body, his hind legs jerked, claws scraping at the blanket, then at the edge of the bed, making a faint but sharp creak, a whisper from memories that never sleep. His jaws clenched, then parted, letting out strange noises, not quite howls, not really whimpers, but broken, fragmented sounds like pieces of old memory. In his dream, Valor was no longer on a clinic table under the soft lights, but lost in chaos and darkness. The smell of gunpowder mixed with dust, the air thick with heat and the tension of war. Explosions ripped the sky, helicopter blades screamed like windstorms, people shouted in a tangle of languages, sometimes commands, sometimes pleas. On that ground, Valor saw himself running through barriers, through arcs of tracer fire, and the sharp smell of blood. A shadowy figure darted ahead, camo uniform, an arm waving him forward. "Kilo, here, guard!" That call echoed like a sad refrain, painfully familiar. In the middle of that dream, in the real world, Valor jerked harder. His paws scratched at some invisible barrier, claws scraping the wall near the bed. Juno woke, groggy, but alert enough to realize this wasn't normal. In the dim light, he saw Valor clawing at the white wall, head pressed into the corner, mouth making small, haunted sounds. Juno stood, unsure, then crept closer and placed a shaky hand on Valor's back, meaning to soothe him. But he paused, realizing this dog wasn't simply dreaming a nightmare, but seemed to be searching for a way out, the path he'd once run to escape gunfire, to freedom, or toward someone who was once his whole world. Juno stood in silence, tears welling in his eyes. In that moment, he understood the kind of pain only someone who has wandered cold streets at night can know. The longing for a place called home, for arms that once held you through the storm, for a gentle voice that once promised, "Stay." He whispered almost to himself, "It's okay. You're not alone anymore." Juno's whisper drifted through the quiet, reaching Elias and making him stir. He sat up and saw Juno gently soothing Valor, the boy's trembling hands on the dog's back, while Valor finally began to relax, pulling himself from the nightmare, pressing his head into the young man's palms. Elias was moved, saying nothing, just sitting beside the two, quietly laying a hand on the dog, a shared anchor for three wounded souls. The small room was still, but now something warm had crept in, an invisible empathy, a new friendship just beginning, and the hope that old nightmares might, in time, be healed by patience and care. Valor settled into peaceful sleep, breathing even, paws no longer twitching. Beyond the window, moonlight lay over the three of them in soft silver, a silent promise that here, if only for this long night, souls once lost in darkness had found each other, sharing dreams and pain, all facing a light that never truly goes out. The first sleepy light of dawn slipped through the frosted clinic windows, painting the floor in a thin wash of pale gold. Copper Canyon was quiet. The only sounds the ticking clock and the steady breaths of Elias, Juno, and Valor, still half lost in the haze of a night that changed them all. The morning chill crept through the room, but in the corner, the warmth from Valor's body stretched between Elias and Juno, binding them with an invisible thread. Elias had been awake for some time. Years of habit kept his eyes open before sunrise, but today, instead of quietly preparing for another day of battle, he sat watching the peaceful form of the dog he'd just met, overwhelmed by a strange new feeling, somewhere between man and animal, Juno, too, had only managed a bit of sleep, dark circles shadowing his eyes, but his face looked more at ease, soothed by Valor's soft breathing beside him. Suddenly, the calm was shattered by a sharp, unexpected sound. A heavy thump struck the front glass door, echoing hard and flat like a warning. Hinges rattled, then fell silent. For a split second, time froze. Elias startled, but hadn't moved yet when Valor, until then half asleep, snapped instantly awake. In the blink of an eye, the dog shifted from rest to full alert, springing to his feet on aching legs, every muscle tensed, lean but iron strong, ready to defend. He didn't bark or howl in panic. Instead, Valor moved forward, positioning himself directly between Elias and the source of the noise, his posture that of a seasoned warrior, weight low, shoulders angled, neck stretched, ears standing tall and vigilant for the slightest movement. His tail was low, pressed to the floor, a sign of seriousness, not fear. Elias froze, and for a split second it was as if he were seeing Titan, his old K9 partner, reborn in new form. Once more, Elias felt a strange reassurance, a sense that in the face of any danger he was no longer alone. The words slipped out. "Good boy, Valor." As if acknowledging the praise, Valor glanced at him for a heartbeat, then snapped his focus back to the door, body never leaving guard position. Juno, still groggy, nearly fell out of his chair at the display. He whispered, his voice a mix of awe and delight. "Elias, did you see that? He moves just like a soldier. I've never seen a dog act like this, especially with someone who rescued him less than a day ago." Dr. Geller, always practical, rarely moved by sentiment, couldn't hide her concerned stare. She stepped closer to Valor, keeping a careful distance, watching each movement, every flick of an ear, every breath. Beneath the grizzled gold-gray fur, Valor's muscles were strung tight as steel cable, claws pressed into the floor, gaze sharp and unafraid. She asked Elias, her voice rough, "Was he formally trained in the Force? This stance, this focus, it's not just instinct." Elias nodded, voice somber. "I think so, Doctor. I've never seen a stray or even a house dog react so precisely to a threat." He gently patted Valor's shoulder, lowering his voice as if giving an order. "Good boy, at ease." Strangely, Valor understood at once, settling by Elias's side, but still keeping his eyes on the door, not quite letting his guard down. Juno grinned, a little in awe, a little envious. "If I hadn't seen it myself, I'd never believe a dog could be so disciplined, especially after all he's just been through." Geller slowly approached, eyes fixed on the worn silver collar and its faded numbers. A clue to a past life. She made a note in her book, murmuring, "This isn't a coincidence. This dog carries secrets and a worth we can't yet imagine." A moment later, the door jerked open. Just a delivery worker, leaving a box and vanishing like the wind. Once the footsteps faded, Elias exhaled, and Valor gradually relaxed, though his eyes never fully trusted the peace. Juno sat down next to Elias and Valor, gently running his hand along the dog's back. "You're amazing, little soldier." In the dawn light, the image of a battered dog standing guard for his new person, ignoring pain, ignoring a dark past, became a living symbol of loyalty and silent courage. For Elias, that moment felt like a small miracle. At the edge of pain, among scarred souls, he saw the return of faith, something he, Juno, and even Valor had thought they'd lost on life's road. The air in the clinic brightened. It was no longer just a shelter for the wounded, but now a true haven where miracles might begin, starting with the watchful eyes of this extraordinary dog and the compassionate hearts of people who'd learned to live only in the past. And as morning came in full, they all knew this new day would open a brand new chapter where every secret would begin to surface, and friendship and the small miracles of resilience would be written anew by the choice not to give up, made by both man and dog. The tension faded from the clinic, but none of the three could return to who they'd been before. Valor's stance lingered in Juno, and Geller's minds like a secret just uncovered. Meanwhile, Elias watched the dog at his feet, a soul marked by old discipline, glory, and loss. After a while, Elias rose. His eyes were heavy with sorrow, yet also glinted with curiosity and an inexplicable faith. Last night, he'd known Valor wasn't just another victim. Now, seeing those protective instincts so sharp, even in pain, Elias decided to test his hunch. "Can I see him follow commands?" Juno whispered, his eyes bright with a child's anticipation. Elias didn't answer at once. He knelt, bringing himself level with Valor, hand resting lightly on the dog's neck, his voice dropping into that old, commanding timbre. He looked deep into Valor's eyes, a look that was both a question and a test of trust. "Sit." Without hesitation, Valor sat back straight, eyes waiting. "Down!" Valor dropped, chin to the floor, front legs stretched, nose pointing to Elias. Elias raised a hand, made an old signal, 2 fingers curled in a circle before his chest, then pointed at the door. "Watch!" Valor immediately shifted, gaze fixed on the door, whole body ready to react. A true bodyguard. Juno's jaw dropped. "I've never seen a dog understand both English commands and hand signals, and get them all right, first try." Elias went on, his voice stern but tinged with old sorrow and challenge. "Stay." Valor froze like a statue, only his eyes moving, waiting for the next cue. "Come." Like a perfect machine, Valor bolted to Elias, stopping by his side, head up for orders. The more Geller watched, the deeper her frown. She moved closer, quietly taking notes, whispering, "These aren't house dog tricks. This is the training of a special canine." Elias, silent, couldn't help himself. He tried one last command, a phrase reserved for frontline dogs, a mission of highest importance. "Seek and protect." At those words, Valor transformed. His ears shot up, eyes wide, brown eyes suddenly shining with moisture, as if some distant memory had been awakened. He stared at Elias, trembling, breath quickening, tail tucked, eyes glistening, not just with fear, but a surge of emotion, both recognizing something lost and aching for something to return. Juno stood silent, seeing in Valor's eyes not just obedience or reflex, but something deeply human, longing, regret, and a burning desire to once more serve a mission that had once defined his life. Elias bowed his head, gently stroked the dog's spine. He knew this command was not just a test. It was a reminder of glory days, but also of the pain that comes with unfinished missions and lost comrades. "You remember, don't you, Valor? Did someone ever give you that command before?" Valor never looked away from Elias, eyes dark and shining, and for the first time, they held not only fear, but resolve, a longing to live, to protect, to love, no matter how hard the past. The silence stretched in the small room, broken only by the tick of the clock and the dog's trembling breath. In that instant, Geller, Juno, and Elias all understood. Valor was more than a dog lucky to survive. He was a warrior, a soul still bound by the promise to seek and protect, a mission he had never been able to let go. And from that moment, they all knew in their hearts, this story, this fate, this journey, still held secrets to be revealed, but nothing would ever be the same. After the command, "Seek and protect," echoed through the room, a special kind of silence settled. Valor still sat at Elias's feet, his eyes shimmering with tears, the deep brown gaze holding an emotion only those who've truly known loss can recognize. Dr. Geller quietly stepped back, leaving space for the 2 men and the dog to find their language after what had just unfolded. Juno crouched down beside them, gripping the edge of his chair, dark eyes full of thought. He just watched Valor for a long moment, as if searching for a memory inside the dog's trembling gaze. Elias noticed a deep empathy in Juno's look, Not a child's curiosity, but the understanding of someone who had also been hurt. Finally, Juno smiled softly, his voice still carrying a trace of sadness. I get how this dog feels, Elias. There was a time I was just like him. Elias stayed silent, eyes on Juno, listening without interruption. Outside, the sunlight had risen, but inside the room it felt like time had stopped at some old, buried memory. Juno spoke slowly, not looking at anyone, his focus entirely on Valor, as if whispering a secret that only those left behind could truly understand. One winter my family kicked me out. The first night on the street was so cold, I didn't think I'd make it. Then, near the train station, I met this old dog. Gray fur, floppy ears, cloudy eyes. I was scared and kind of hated it, thinking it was just another creature nobody wanted, like me. But that night it just lay next to me, didn't ask for food, didn't bark, just nudged my hand with its nose whenever I shivered. Juno paused, blinking as if to brush away old memories, then continued, his voice lower and laced with pain. Next morning some people brought food, but chased us both away. There were times I hated the world so much, I just wanted to disappear. But every time I tried to find a new place to sleep, the old dog followed, lying across the wind for me. The second night, it got even colder, and I thought it wouldn't survive. But it kept its head near my hand, kept looking at me until morning, when it just couldn't open its eyes anymore. Juno's voice faded, still fixed on Valor, as if the old dog's spirit had come back in this battered shepherd. I used to think, if only I'd had the courage to trust someone again, maybe things would have been different. That old dog wanted to believe in people but was scared of being left behind. It saved me, but I couldn't save it. Even now, when I see a stray, I wonder maybe they're just like me, craving love but terrified of being forgotten. Elias stayed silent, his eyes shifting to Valor. In the quiet, sunlight shone across the dog's faded fur. Valor's eyes still held a haunted look, wary yet hopeful, as if every time Elias touched him, he was silently asking, "Will I be kept this time? Or is this just another stopover before I'm forgotten again?" Juno reached out, hesitating, then stroked Valor's head. This time, the dog didn't flinch or shy away as before. He stretched his neck, softly touching his nose to Juno's hand, his gaze softening. A wordless bond of shared understanding. "I don't know why," Juno whispered, "but when Valor looks at me, it's like he sees that old dog. He doesn't just want to live. He wants to trust that someone won't leave him behind this time." Elias swallowed hard, memories flooding back. Maybe he'd been the same, out on the battlefield, or during those lost nights after the army, searching someone's eyes for assurance that he still mattered, that someone still needed him. He leaned in, his hand steady and gentle on Valor's back. "You get it, don't you? That feeling of being left behind, of being lost. But this time, I'm not leaving you." In that moment, the eyes of Elias, Juno, and Valor met. A brief connection between three souls, each with a different past, all knowing what it means to be alone, to long for home, for friendship, for a place to belong. For Elias, since the loss of Titan, he'd locked his heart, refusing to bond again with people or with animals. But now, looking into Valor's wary, vulnerable eyes, he realized his heart was opening again. Because in that gaze, he saw his old loneliness, his longing to live, to be needed, to be protected. Juno smiled, stroking the patchy fur growing back in spots. "I think we shouldn't just rescue him once. We should stay with him for good, right, Elias? So he knows this time he gets to stay. He gets to be trusted, loved as part of a real family." Elias nodded, saying nothing more, but tears shone in his eyes. He gently drew Valor close, letting the dog lean against him, his hand never stopping its gentle strokes. A silent promise. The little room glowed with morning sun, the air warmer, old wounds softened by fragile hope and shared kindness. Juno sat with Elias and Valor, three lives once fractured, now joined by an invisible thread: friendship, empathy, and faith in a new beginning. As Tucson's night closed in, The Copper Canyon Clinic slipped back into its familiar hush. The soft glow of a nightlight cast shadows of the three figures, Elias, Juno, and Valor, lying close together, each drifting in their patch of memory and fragile hope. But that night was not the peaceful reprieve they'd hoped for after so many exhausting days. Beneath it all, the shepherd's protective instinct and unease pulsed through every breath. Sometime near midnight, as Juno's breathing deepened in sleep and Elias drifted into fitful dreams, Valor suddenly sprang up. No sharp barking shattered the silence, nor any frantic howls like other dogs might let out at the scent of danger. Instead, Valor rose quietly, every muscle taut, moving with smooth, precise steps across the floor. His cold, keen eyes locked on the front glass door, where a fleeting shadow had just passed. Juno shifted in his sleep, unconsciously pulling his blanket tighter. Elias hadn't woken yet, but a chill of unease seeped through the room like a cold wind. Valor crept up to the door, rumbling with a low, almost inaudible growl. Not threatening, but a clear warning to the stranger outside. "I'm here. Don't take another step." The dog's eyes stayed glued to the darkness beyond, each breath strong and deliberate, the focus of a true guardian. It was only when Valor's growl grew louder that Elias jolted awake, his brain instantly on alert. He shot upright, saw Valor standing between him and the door, back arched, tail pressed tight, gaze fixed on the shadows. Elias rose, signaling Juno to keep quiet, then slowly moved toward the glass. Outside, in the blurry light of the street lamp, a figure darted past, fast and practiced, enough for a man like Elias to know this wasn't any ordinary vagrant. Elias cracked the door, keeping a firm grip on Valor's collar to prevent him from bolting. Valor's gaze never left the retreating shadow, ears high, nose taking in the scent of the stranger slipping in with the desert night. On the doorstep, caught in the crack of the old mat, something flashed. A small folding tactical knife with a black handle, the kind carried by mercenaries or operatives. Elias bent to pick it up, heart pounding, and spotted a folded slip of paper beside it, damp from dew, stamped with a muddy boot print. He unfolded it. The red-inked letters were simple and cold. "If you know what's good for you, walk away. Next time won't just be a warning." No more words were needed. It was a threat, direct and unmistakable. Elias gripped the knife, eyes scanning the darkness where the intruder had vanished, feeling a jolt of adrenaline he thought he'd left behind in another life. Meanwhile, Valor never left his post by the door. The dog stepped in, sniffing the knife, drawing in the scent of steel, human sweat, and earth. His brown eyes blazed. He was committing this scent to memory, a mark he'd never forget. Juno, trembling, edged closer. "What's going on, Elias?" Elias shook his head, tucking the knife and note into his coat pocket, shielding Juno from worry. He murmured to Valor in the calmest voice he could muster. "It's okay. You did great. Stay here with me." Valor met his gaze and nodded, a rare gesture for any dog, but for Valor, it was a silent sign of perfect understanding. Elias didn't sleep the rest of the night. He sat against the wall, eyes on the door, hand resting on Valor's back. And Valor, though tired, never left his side, always ready to spring at the faintest sound. Juno curled up in the corner, eyes wide, watching the two soldiers keeping watch. For the first time, he didn't feel alone. Because in that little room, in the cold Tucson night, he felt the solid presence, faith, and courage burning in a battered dog who'd crossed 1,000 battlefields and still refused to stop being a protector for those he trusted. Outside, the wind howled at the window. But inside, with old wounds unhealed and new threats rising, Valor's gaze stayed steady, a silent promise. Whether it's the past, the darkness, or dangers yet to come, he would never turn away and would protect to the very end, as long as someone was willing to stay by his side. Dawn crept through the clinic window after a long, uneasy night, bringing with it a pale light that seemed to soothe the lingering anxieties yet to fade. Elias, eyes shadowed with exhaustion, sat beside Valor, the dog's head still pressed to his leg, those brown eyes alert but always shining with an unbreakable will to protect. No one spoke, but through each breath and every glance, all understood. Last night, a door to the past and to new danger had just been cracked open. Juno was the first to wake, instantly sensing the changed atmosphere in the room. His footsteps were light as he approached, hand gently stroking Valor's back, as if wanting to give a little comfort. In response, Valor only shifted slightly, never taking his eyes off Elias or the glass door, the place where danger had lingered just hours before. Dr. Geller entered last, clutching a medical file and a pair of glasses clouded from a sleepless night. She quietly checked Valor's hind leg, where bruises and stitches had finally started to dry. But when she lifted the fur near his thigh, Geller suddenly frowned. Beneath the dense coat, a tiny faded tattoo appeared, its ink now faint but clear in the morning light. A code of numbers and letters, K92V. She reached for a magnifier, then turned to Elias, her voice grave. "This dog, he's got a military tattoo. That's the kind of code only found in special units, not with regular canines." Elias fell silent. He knelt beside Valor, following Geller's finger to the mark. His gaze locked on that code, the place where every mystery began to unravel. "This is a K9 code for a special ops unit," Elias said, voice tight. "Every combat K9 gets an ID. K92V. Kilo." Geller opened her laptop, searching the working animal database. The keyboard clicked. The screen flickered through layers of files until it stopped on an old record. K92V, codename Kilo. Breed, German Shepherd. Unit, U.S. Marshal Service, Task Force 9. Note, presumed killed in a large explosion 2 years ago. The body has not recovered. Listed as missing presumed dead. Juno's mouth dropped open. Elias could only stare, old memories flooding him like a tidal wave. "Kilo," he whispered, his voice a blend of disbelief and longing. Valor lifted his head, and something changed in his deep brown eyes. Gone was the wary, fearful look, replaced by something warmer like a fragile hope, an old memory awakening. Dr. Geller gently touched Valor's head, her eyes now filled with tenderness. "You're a warrior returned from the darkness, aren't you?" Valor didn't bark. He simply pressed his head into her palm, an act of gratitude and trust. Juno sank to the floor, watching in awe, murmuring as if to himself, "So all this time, he's carried an unfinished mission, just waiting for someone to recognize him." Elias sighed, his heart aching with a mix of pain and hope. He placed a hand on Valor's head, patting gently as if making a promise. "From now on, you don't have to hide or be afraid anymore. No matter who tried to use you, no matter how cruel the memories, you're allowed to be yourself here, to live, to be protected, and to be loved." In that moment, Geller, Elias, and Juno all sensed something inside Valor being set free. His eyes no longer reflected only darkness and loss, but now shimmered with the spirit of a warrior finding himself again, and a fragile hope that even if danger still lingered, there was now a chance to start anew. The small room glowed, lit not only by the revelation of truth, but by the belief in tomorrow for the dog once called Kilo, now with his new name, Valor. The sun had risen higher, streaks of gold crossing the clinic floor in a light both warm and bittersweet. Dr. Geller continued jotting notes from the records, but the air in the room had changed completely, as if they'd reached some sacred threshold, a place where time, memory, and life flowed together, unseen but powerful. Elias still sat there, his hand resting on Valor's neck. The veins in his wrist stood out, not just from emotion but from the shock of memories suddenly surfacing, causing even his strong shoulders to tremble for a moment. K92V, those 4 characters, revealed beneath faded fur, held his gaze. His mind ached with an unnamed longing. How long had it been since he'd looked at the ID tattooed on a war dog's leg? How long since he'd let himself wander back to those days in Fallujah, or the dusty Middle Eastern outposts? Places where every code, every call sign was a lifeline. Another reel of memory, grainy and old, began to unwind inside Elias. He remembered Titan, his first K9 partner, strong, smart, braver than any comrade. The night Titan was lost, Elias felt like a part of himself was left behind on that battlefield, and that from then on he could never allow himself to trust or love another four-legged soul. But now, in the gentle clinic light, in front of him was Valor. With his cold ID, a warrior erased from records, bearing both physical wounds and the shadow of trauma, just like Titan once did. Elias bowed his head, whispering as if to himself, but speaking straight to the heart of Valor. "Titan, do you remember?" The moment the name Titan left his lips, Valor jolted. The dog turned, ears pricked, every muscle suddenly taut, as if hearing a signal only he could understand. Valor's eyes, already deep and sad, opened wide, sparkling with something impossible to name. His breathing quickened, chest heaving as if searching for a lost piece of memory. Elias saw it all. This wasn't fear or obedience, but something much more complex. Surprise, confusion, hope, longing, and the ache of regret. That name, Titan, was a key turning in some hidden part of Valor's mind, unlocking a door to memories that weren't his, or perhaps had been implanted through training, loss, and reassignment. Juno watched every change in Valor, unable to hold back tears. With trembling lips, Juno murmured, "Elias, I think..." That name reached something deep in him. It's like when you hear someone mention a memory you thought you'd forgotten. Dr. Geller looked uncertainly at Elias, then at Valor. There's research showing that special K9s don't just work on instinct. Their memories are the result of countless repetitions of mission and command. Sometimes, after years of retraining or handler transfers, those memories stay, imprinted almost like a genetic code. Elias leaned in, pressing his forehead to Valor's, their breaths mingling. With a voice gentle and full of empathy, he repeated, "Titan was a partner, a friend. And you, Valor, maybe you're not Titan, but in you I see both souls living together. I believe, whether it's old or new memories, the protect order or stay, the most important thing is you're here now, and no one has the right to erase or manipulate that anymore." Remarkably, Valor no longer shrank away. He pressed his head into Elias's hand, eyes glistening with tears, as if finally freed from the invisible chains that had bound him for so long. No bark, no howl, just a soft whimper holding the weight of memory, loss, and a tiny flicker of hope. Juno slid in beside Elias, gently patting the dog's back, murmuring as if making a promise to himself. "Whether you're Titan, Valor, or any other name, here you've got a real family. We're not going to let you wander alone again." In the small clinic room, beneath the brightening morning sun after a long, anxious night, something huge was being reborn. It was faith in love, not the kind boxed up in manipulated memory, but real love between wounded souls, finally healing together. And in that space, Titan lived again through Valor. For Elias, for the first time in so many years, he truly wanted to believe in miracles, that no matter what the past, a dog can always start again, if someone has the patience to call his name with their whole heart. In the small clinic room, the atmosphere settled, letting the 3 humans and 1 dog savor the fragile rebirth of memory. After so much upheaval, Elias sat back in his chair, eyes closed, letting himself soak in the warmth and ache beside Valor. Juno was lost in sketching, his shaky lines trying to capture the image of the dog resting his head on Elias's hand, each stroke filled with affection. Only Dr. Geller watched it all quietly, missing none of the subtle shifts in Valor's stance, gaze, or breath. The clinic door rattled softly, pulling everyone back to the present. Elias didn't need to look to know the silhouette at the doorway. Strong, decisive, a stride that carried the unmistakable weight of someone used to walking through danger. "Hey, home team!" A woman's voice, deep and just a little rough. This was Nia West, a Tucson police lieutenant, and an old friend from Elias's Army days. No sooner had she entered than Nia swept her gaze around the room, sharp-eyed as a panther on patrol. But before she could greet Elias, she stopped short. Valor had already risen, instantly tuning in to a familiar signal. He sniffed the air, then moved forward, not with the suspicion he'd shown strangers before, but with orderly calm, the bearing of a seasoned K9. Nia paused, watching. Valor moved in a half-circle around the room, nose lightly touching corners, chairs, the window, checking every entrance and exit. Satisfied, he returned to Elias's side, lying down in a protective block between Elias and the visitor, his gaze sharp as if declaring, "Here, I'm responsible for keeping you safe." Elias smiled, partly to reassure both Valor and Nia, but in his eyes there was something deeper, a flash of emotion at seeing the dog's actions, not as the instinct of a stray, but the indelible mark of professional training, of years of discipline and pain. Nia watched, eyebrows raised in open admiration. "Wow. It's been ages since I've seen a dog act by the K9 playbook like that. The last time was when we trained Titan together, but—" She stepped closer, studying Valor, the way he locked his eyes on the threat, his protective lean, his measured breathing. No frantic barking or howling. "This dog," Nia continued, "wasn't just trained. He's had his memory reset after major trauma." Elias looked at her in surprise. "What do you mean, Nia?" Nia knelt by Elias so Valor could sniff her hand. The dog didn't shy away, just gave a quick lick, then lay back down across Elias's feet, ready to protect him to the end. "I investigated a case like this in Phoenix last year," Nia explained. "Some K9s, after accidents or severe psychological trauma, lose their memory or develop disordered reactions. Rehab centers sometimes try to reset them, start from scratch, retrain with basics, pair new positive memories with familiar actions, minimize traumatic triggers." Juno listened, eyes wide in wonder. "So you mean Valor lost his memory, then had to recover, like a person learning to live again after trauma?" Nia nodded, her voice gentle. "Exactly. But not every dog can make it back. Only the most resilient, the ones with the strongest bonds to people, ever return to duty, or even to a normal life." Elias fell silent. He remembered that first night with Valor, the trembling, the wary eyes desperate for a safe anchor, the way he'd obeyed commands even through fear. Now, with Nia's words, it all became clearer. Maybe the reason he survived, the reason he still has that drive, is because his memory was rebooted, but at the same time, he's always haunted by the fear of abandonment, ready to fight, but never daring to believe he belongs anywhere. Geller nodded, watching Valor with a tenderness reserved for children after a long illness. He's always searching for a mission, someone to be loyal to, but terrified he'll be left behind again. Nia gently stroked Valor's head, a slow smile blooming. "Even so, this dog still has the instinct to pick the right people to protect. I believe, he's already found his real family." Valor seemed to sense the mood. He sighed softly, head tilted between Elias and Nia. His gaze softened, no longer tense but glowing with a fragile, newfound hope. Elias squeezed the scruff of Valor's neck, an unspoken promise. "We won't make you start over again, Valor. Whatever your past, here you've been reset. Not just your memory, but your fate." Juno smiled, quietly sketching a new halo of light around Valor in his notebook, as if helping to preserve this peaceful moment for a dog who had survived so much darkness, now finally finding his light. Late morning sunlight slanted gold across the clinic floor. The sense of peace after Nia West's visit was short-lived. Outside, The distant sound of an ambulance faded. Inside, Elias, Nia, Juno, and Dr. Geller gathered around the extraordinary shepherd, as if trying to hold on to a rare quiet after so many earth-shaking revelations about Valor's past. Valor, too, seemed changed from his first hours here. No longer hyper-vigilant, but not fully relaxed either. Some invisible chill seemed to swirl around his regrowing fur, making him rise and settle repeatedly beside Elias's feet, never letting his sharp brown eyes leave his new master. Dr. Geller was just about to pour tea when her laptop suddenly chimed. Her email inbox flashed urgently, a message from the National Animal Data Center, where she'd sent Valor's DNA and report on his unusual signs just hours earlier. Elias moved to the laptop under everyone's watchful gaze. On screen, alongside confirmation that the DNA matched K92V-Kilo, a flashing red alert appeared. Unauthorized data access detected. 2 attempts were made to breach this file. Check security immediately. The room went cold. Nia was first to speak, her voice low and tense. "We leak. Someone tried to get Valor's file from outside the system. Someone's watching us." Juno sank into his chair, gripping his pen in white-knuckled fear. Geller quickly locked the laptop, unplugged the network, and put phones on airplane mode. But everyone knew it was too late. Once data leaked on a government system, you could never take it back. Before anyone could process, Elias's phone rang. The display showed only private number. He glanced at Nia, then answered on speaker. A man's voice came through, obviously distorted by a voice changer, cold and even. "Captain Monroe, we know you have a shepherd, code K92V. I'm calling on behalf of the unit. You are ordered to transfer the dog to federal custody. This is a federal mandate. No discussion." Elias gripped the phone, his expression dark. "Who are you? What unit? I need proper verification." The voice ignored him. "We've matched the DNA and all program data for the special K9 project. Everything Valor, call him that if you want, has seen or done is classified. At this time, he is a national security risk. Surrender him. If you delay, consequences will extend to you and anyone with you." Nia stood beside Elias, recording the call, one hand on her holstered sidearm. Juno was pale, eyes glued to Valor, while Geller sat frozen, knuckles white. Elias kept his voice steady. "If this is about national security, let Tucson PD confirm with the federal agency. I don't take orders from private numbers." A pause. The voice returned, colder. "Don't be stupid. Don't make this harder for everyone. If you don't comply, there will be an incident. Don't put yourself or those you care about at risk. You have 24 hours. We'll come get him ourselves." The line went dead, leaving the clinic in suffocating silence. Only Valor seemed unsurprised. From the moment the phone rang, he had pressed close to Elias, hackles up, breath shallow and quick. This was not mere instinct. This was clear recognition of danger. Valor shifted, always keeping himself between Elias and the exits, eyes locked on the doors and windows, as if bracing for the next threat. Nia spoke, voice troubled. "No one but those with access to K9 classified files could get the DNA this fast. This isn't just a dog trafficker. This could be military, federal, or someone involved in their SETS program." Geller's hands shook as she set tea beside Elias in support, but her gaze never left Valor. If what they say is true, this dog is more than a witness. He's a living data vault, holding secrets no security system could ever contain. Juno sat close to Valor, stroking the bristling fur, whispering, "He's scared, but he isn't running. It's like he knows there's no going back to the past and no return to whoever tried to control him." Elias placed his hand firmly on Valor's head, eyes full of determination. "I promise I won't let them take you. Whoever they are, whatever their reason, I will protect you. To the end." Valor looked up at him, eyes full of quiet, deep emotion, like gratitude, like a fragile trust finally beginning to bloom. No one in the clinic slept that night. The last of the sunlight vanished behind thick clouds. Everyone knew. From the moment the data leaked, the net was closing around them. Only love, trust, and the absolute loyalty of a dog who had walked through hell could keep them safe until everything hidden came to light. As darkness fell over Tucson, the air in the clinic grew heavier, thick with unanswered questions and the tension of that threatening phone call. But in that unease, Elias and Nia's resolve to protect Valor only hardened. They knew waiting wasn't enough. Whoever was out there, whatever their authority, they would not be allowed to decide this dog's fate again. Nia and Elias quickly made a plan. The system couldn't be trusted, nor could anyone they weren't sure of. They needed to trace the threat back to its roots, back to where Valor's past touched darkness. Only one name echoed in their minds: Crowley. In K9 circles, Crowley was notorious, a genius at training, but a figure always lurking in the shadows, his methods straddling the line between discipline and cruelty. His military record was marred by investigations into ethical violations. Excessive, punishing methods, from electric shocks to psychological isolation, breaking K9s into absolute tools of obedience. Years had passed without a word about him, but after the data leak, Crowley's name resurfaced in reports about the stolen K9 DNA system. A friend of Nia's in animal protection tipped them off about an old compound on the city's edge, Crowley's former independent training facility. Now it was just a row of abandoned warehouses, but recent signs suggested someone had been coming and going. Elias packed light: a folding knife, pepper spray, and a sturdy collar for Valor. Nia checked her Glock, loaded a fresh magazine, and double-checked her encrypted radio and flashlight. When they headed out to the car, Valor clung close to Elias, silent and proud. In the dim light on the sidewalk, his gray fur glinted with strength, but only Elias noticed the slight twitch of Valor's ears and the darkening of his eyes, the quickening breath each time Crowley was mentioned. They reached the warehouse complex just as full night fell, rows of rusting containers forming a labyrinth. The air reeked of metal, mildew, and something sharper, the chemical tang of training, the scent of raw meat, the sweat and fear of countless dogs that had passed through. Valor changed immediately. Even before the car was off, he was pressed against the window, silent but bristling, every muscle taut. As soon as he got out, he took the lead, nose to the ground, every step cautious, every sense alive with a soldier's instinct. Nia raised a hand, signaling to stop near the warehouse door. A faint sound, the drag of footsteps on concrete, echoed through the night. And then Crowley appeared. Tall, broad-shouldered, graying hair, eyes cold as steel under the harsh neon light. He stood in the corridor, gaze locked on Elias and Nia, but truly fixed on Valor. For a moment, all sound ceased. Only Valor's heavy breathing filled the dark. Valor froze. His body trembled, eyes tracing Crowley's silhouette. The man's scent, confinement, whips, the memory of endless nights in a cage, hit Valor like a wave. He stepped back half a pace, ears high, lips peeled back in a silent snarl, baring perfect white teeth. A deep, nearly instinctive fear knotted inside him. Elias felt it in the dog's trembling shoulder beneath his hand. Crowley gave a cold smile, his voice low. "Didn't think I'd see you again, Kilo. Or is it Valor now? You remember the rules, don't you?" Valor growled, but didn't lunge. Between the urge to protect and sheer terror, he fought a silent war inside. But when Crowley stepped closer to Elias and Nia, Valor moved instantly, blocking the path, his whole body a shield, even as his hind legs still faltered. Nia narrowed her eyes, drawing her gun and chambering a round without hesitation. "One more step and I shoot, Crowley. You have no more claim over these lives." Crowley stepped back, shrugged, but kept his icy gaze on Valor, voice tinged with challenge. "You think you can save him, but you don't know what's been programmed into his head." Elias gripped Valor's collar tighter, hand firm on the dog's back, lending steady trust. "You're not a tool anymore, Valor. You're family." Valor shook. but in his eyes a new fierceness flared, like a soldier, terrified but choosing to stand his ground, to shield his people from the past instead of running. When they finally left the warehouse, Elias leaned down and whispered into Valor's ear, "You did great, Valor. You don't have to fight alone anymore." And for the first time, even with his legs still weak, Valor pressed himself against Elias, licking his hand, a small gesture but enough to dispel the heavy shadows clinging to him. The wounds of the past remained, but tonight, Valor's eyes shone with new faith. Whatever danger lay ahead, he would not be alone again. The atmosphere in the car as they left Crowley's warehouse was thick and tense, silence stretching as if testing everyone's and Valor's strength to the limit. Elias drove, glancing back often. Valor lay at his feet, a big shape that seemed still but trembled whenever the car jolted. In the headlights passing through the window, his gray fur glimmered, a map of pain, but also extraordinary survival. Nia sat in the back, eyes always on her phone and encrypted radio. "Crowley won't stop," she muttered, as much to herself as a warning. Elias answered only with a thoughtful nod. His focus was on Valor, above any threat ahead. Back at the clinic, before anyone could even take off their shoes, they found Juno and Dr. Geller waiting, papers stacked on the table. Temporary adoption forms, co-signed by the rescue center and the local animal hospital. In truth, it was a flimsy shield against the dangers closing in, but the only legal way to keep Valor safe, at least until the truth was revealed, or until there was nothing left to lose. Elias stared at the forms, his hand tightening unconsciously. Nia rested her hand gently on his shoulder, lending him a quiet courage. "If you sign, you know what you're facing. Crowley, the people behind the scenes, even those who might try to claim national security to take him away." He didn't answer right away. Instead, he knelt by Valor, looking into the dog's eyes with all the love he had. Up close, Elias saw the patchy fur, the old and new scars, but most of all, the deep brown eyes, intense, vulnerable, as if all the trust Valor could muster might be swept away by the slightest breeze. Elias stroked the dog's neck, whispering, "If you choose to stay, I promise I'll never let anyone hurt you again. I can't promise there won't be danger, but I promise I'll fight with you, all the way." Valor was silent for a long moment. Then, as if understanding every word, he nudged his head forward, gently licking Elias's worn hand. It was not submission, but a gift of trust, the first time he'd initiated such contact since their paths crossed in that dark alley. Valor's eyes shone with tears, not from fear, but the emotion of someone who'd been broken and lost everything, and now found shelter once more. He pressed his head to Elias's chest, rising and falling with anxiety and a small, fierce happiness. Juno, beside them, couldn't hold back tears either. "He trusts you now, Elias. I've never seen Valor, or any abandoned dog, take that step themselves." Dr. Geller gently handed Elias a pen. "You know from now on, you're not just adopting a dog, but facing Valor's past, danger, and even the faintest hopes with him." Without hesitation, Elias signed. Each stroke was a silent vow. On the white paper beneath his name was a space for a paw print of confirmation, and Juno gently guided Valor to place his big, scarred paw there. A quiet, sacred pact, with no need for words. Nia exhaled, embracing Elias. "Looks like fate has chosen you both. There's no turning back now." Elias buried his face in Valor's fur, letting himself cry for the first time in years. Beside him, Valor's eyes shimmered too, pressing closer into his new family, as if all the losses, the wounds, and the years of abandonment melted in this embrace. And in that moment, no one had to say it aloud, but all knew. The friendship between this man and this wounded dog had truly begun, built on trust, courage, and unconditional love. The small room was quiet after the adoption decision, with only the sound of Valor's breathing, and Juno's pencil sketching the dog into his notebook. Elias's gaze softened. For the first time in so long, he felt truly safe with Valor's heavy head resting against his chest, thick fur within his arms. Yet deep down, he knew this peace was fragile, almost illusory. Just as Nia had warned, the darkness wasn't done with them. Only a day after the temporary adoption papers were signed, as the sun set and the city's glass reflected deep orange hues, another call came. This time not from a private number, but from a federal switchboard. For anyone in the field, this sequence of digits couldn't be faked, which, paradoxically, made Elias even more wary. He answered. On the other end, a low, authoritative male voice delivered orders with that unmistakable military administrative tone. This is the K-9 Retrieval Unit from the Department of Homeland Security. We confirm we have information on a shepherd, designation K-92V, currently in your temporary custody under protocol number. You are required to transfer the animal to us at a secure exchange site for reasons of national security. Location? Warehouse 17. B, at the end of the old industrial district. Time, 9 p.m. tonight. Please comply. Do not share this information with anyone. The words were polite, but left no room for argument. They even sent a text message with a matching security code. Everything seemed legitimate, but it was Valor who reacted first, and in that moment became the only sign Elias truly trusted. The instant Elias brought the phone to his ear, Valor sprang up, ears pricked, his body tense as a drawn bow. He paced around Elias's feet, gaze fixed on the man's hand, and let out a low, urgent bark, not loud or panicked, but the kind of special sound K-9s use to warn their handlers of dangers only they can sense. Elias laid a hand on the dog's head, stroking to reassure him, but his own eyes had gone dark. A deep intuition told him not to trust this call. Juno watched nervously from the corner, while Dr. Geller quietly checked the windows, as if she too sensed the night would not be peaceful. Valor barked again, then nudged Elias's hand away from the phone with his nose, urging it down, almost saying, "Don't listen. Don't go." He repeated the action over and over, each time licking Elias's hand or tugging his sleeve, his brown eyes full of an urgent intensity they'd never seen before. Nia arrived just in time. One look at Valor, and she understood immediately. She checked the number that had called, then leaned in to whisper to Elias, "Even if the number is real, it could be spoofed or compromised by an insider. If this really was the federal K-9 unit, why aren't they using official paperwork instead of arranging a meet at some isolated warehouse? This is a setup. We need to be ready." Elias nodded, then turned to Valor. The dog now stood tall, a low growl in his throat, not leaving Elias's side for a moment, as if the old soul of a K-9 soldier had awakened, this time not to obey, but to protect his handler from those same hands that had once controlled him. Elias knelt, staring deep into those brown, fathomless eyes, and whispered as if making a vow, "I'm not leaving you behind. If we face them, we face them together. I trust you more than any data." Nia, Juno, and Dr. Geller gathered silently around Elias and Valor, a quiet but unbreakable circle. Outside, the city was wrapped in night. Inside, in that small room, the only real light came from the unwavering trust of a dog who had walked through so much darkness, and now, for the first time, used his instincts to hold his human back from harm. No one slept that night, each quietly prepared. Nia checked her weapon. Elias mapped out contingency plans. Juno fussed with voice recorders and backup phones, while Valor never left Elias's side, a loyal shadow, timid, yet heartbreakingly brave. Night cloaked the old industrial zone, rows of containers throwing long shadows across the scarred asphalt beneath streetlights. Elias drove slowly, Valor beside him. The K-9 tense ever since they'd left the clinic, eyes never leaving Elias's hands, body ready for trouble even as the man murmured reassurances. Nia followed at a safe distance, ready to jump in if anything went wrong. The meeting point, Warehouse 17B, sat hidden in a deserted corner, its steel doors slightly ajar as if someone was waiting. Elias hesitated, but the coded message on his phone left little choice. Beside him, Valor gave a low whine, paws tapping anxiously on the floorboards. Elias gripped the dog's collar tightly, looking into those eyes for courage. "It's okay. I'm here with you," he whispered. But as soon as they stepped onto the threshold of the warehouse, everything happened too fast. A shadow lunged from behind. A heavy blow landed on Elias's head, sending him staggering. Valor exploded into a furious roar that shook the empty air. Elias tried to turn, to shout, but only managed to catch a glimpse of Valor's blazing eyes before collapsing to the cold floor, consciousness slipping into darkness. Fragments of memory followed, running footsteps, furious barking, bodies wrestling, someone crying out in pain, the sound of chains clashing on metal. It was a slow-motion reel for Elias, lost in the fog, but for Valor, every sense was razor-sharp. Even with two large men holding him down, Valor would not submit. He snarled, twisting to sink his teeth into their arms, fighting savagely despite the rope biting into his flesh and drawing blood. Rough hands tried to muzzle him, but his jaws caught a mouthful of someone's sleeve. A hard kick landed in his chest, dropping him, but the fire in his eyes never faded. There was no surrender. When they finally tied his hind legs, Valor still struggled, body arching to block the attackers from reaching Elias. Blood dripped onto the cold concrete, his coat matted with dust, but his eyes never left his unconscious handler. One of the attackers muttered nervously, "This dog's got a look in his eyes, like he'd tear us apart if we get close." But Valor didn't bark wildly. Instead, he kept a steady growl deep in his chest, head lifting every time someone neared Elias, eyes sharp and proud. Beaten, choked for breath, Valor still refused to let anyone near the man he was sworn to protect. No fear, no despair, only the unbroken will of a wounded warrior who didn't know how to give up. Time seemed frozen in that warehouse. Outside, Nia arrived to see Elias's car parked askew, the door ajar, an eerie stillness in the air. She moved in silence, gun drawn, mind racing with calculations. But in the heart of the night's darkest hour, a flame of loyalty still burned bright in the eyes of a dog who seemed to have lost all hope. Beaten, bound, and dragged away, Valor never stopped turning his head back, forcing himself upright in agony, so that if Elias regained consciousness, the first thing he would see would be the steadfast gaze of a dog who had suffered every cruelty but never once abandoned his friend. When his legs failed him and the ropes held fast, Valor relied on what was left, his eyes. It was not just the survival instinct of an animal, but the spirit of a soldier, fighting to the end for the one he had chosen to love, for the things no one could ever take: freedom, trust, and a bond that nothing could break, not even a trap in the deepest night. Inside Warehouse 17B, the air turned thick and icy after the scuffle. Darkness swallowed every sound, leaving only the ragged, broken breathing of Valor. The K9 now bound tight but still straining to lift his head, fire burning in his eyes. Nearby, Elias lay motionless on the cold concrete, consciousness flickering between pain radiating from his neck and temples. A flashlight swept around and stopped on the weathered face of a man stepping into the doorway. Crowley, the ex-military K9 trainer infamous for his cruelty, the one who had haunted Valor's nightmares for years. Crowley didn't rush. He walked in slowly, the echo of his boots on steel as cold and steady as a sentence already decided. His henchmen fell back, giving him space, a stage for what was left. Valor with his legs twisted under ropes, blood flecking his muzzle, and Elias fighting to sit up, his eyes glassy with pain but never straying from his dog. Crowley paused, eyes glinting as he studied Valor. an ugly grin twisting his lips at the animal's last spark of defiance. "Unbelievable," Crowley said in a low, even tone. "After all these years, you still dare look at me like that, Kilo. Or is it Valor now? Still got that hero complex?" Elias struggled to sit, swaying, but positioned himself in front of Valor, blocking him with his own body despite the ropes and fresh bruises. His voice was hoarse but steady. "What do you want?" Crowley didn't answer right away. He crouched in front of Elias, idly tracing the rope around Valor's neck, his eyes narrowing with menace. "You've got two choices, Monroe. 1. You drop your little investigation. Give me the dog. We'll wipe his memory for good. No more pain, no more secrets. You walk out of here alive. Everything ends tonight." He gestured. A henchman brought over a small case labeled Memory Suppression Kit, the same kind banned from K-9 recovery programs. Crowley's smile twisted darker. "Or 2, you try to play hero. Keep the dog, and I guarantee neither of you will leave here intact. You, him, or both, gone, like you never existed. You think you can take on this whole system?" Silence. Just Valor's gasping breath and the slow drip of blood onto the concrete. Elias looked at his dog. Their eyes met in the gloom. No barking, no struggling, just that deep, burning gaze. "Whatever happens, I won't give up." Elias felt it. Pain, fear, doubt all fell away. He laid a gentle hand on Valor's head, despite the ropes, and whispered words only 2 souls who'd survived the dark could truly understand. "If there's a choice, I'll never give you up, just like you never gave up on me." Crowley sneered, cold and mocking. "Touching. But what I need is silence, oblivion. Make your choice." Elias didn't hesitate. "You want to erase Valor's memory just to cover up your crimes? No one has that right, not even you. I choose to fight, and I know Valor does too." On the freezing concrete, Valor, exhausted, lifted his head, pressing it into Elias's lap, his eyes shining with tears. In them, a warrior spirit reignited, a vow. "No matter the cost, I will not let truth or memory be buried again." The darkness pressed in from all sides. But there, among the hunters, a defiant light refused to die. Friendship and loyalty, faced with a life or death choice. And that resolve, beyond words, would be the flame that guided them out of a night of lies and shadows. The air in the warehouse seemed to freeze after Elias's challenge. Crowley signaled his crew to step back, his face hardening with calculation. On the cold floor, Elias remained beside Valor, wrists tied behind his back, never breaking eye contact with those deep brown eyes, where trust, fear, and the battle-hardened soul of a warrior all glowed in unyielding defiance. Crowley's voice grew sharp. "You have no idea what you're up against, Monroe. I'll end this myself tonight." Elias didn't answer. Instead, his fingers searched for the small pocket on his chest, where Dr. Geller had secretly tucked a device. A military-grade K-9 ultrasonic whistle, coded to a frequency only specially trained dogs could hear and obey. She had whispered to Elias before he left, "Only use it if it's desperate. This whistle won't turn Valor into a weapon. It'll just remind him. His real mission isn't to kill, but to protect." As Crowley barked orders for the mind wipe kit, Elias seized his moment, clenched his jaw, and brought the whistle to his lips, blowing hard. No one heard anything, except Valor. Instantly, the dog jolted as if hit by lightning, every muscle tensed, veins pulsing at his temples, ears standing tall as radar. In that split second, the whole world shrank to a single command: "Protect!" Steel chains rattled. The henchmen were caught off guard. Valor threw his weight into a lunge, jaws clamping down on the shackles around his legs. There was a sharp crack, and suddenly that massive body sprang free, launching itself straight toward Elias and Crowley. Men shouted, some scrambling for guns, but Valor, though his warrior's instinct had returned, didn't attack wildly. He paused, eyes darting as he assessed, then barreled into the thug holding Elias, knocking him away and shielding his handler with his own body. Blows rained down on his back, but Valor only growled, never biting, never drawing blood. He used his size to scatter or pin his attackers, always forcing them away from Elias. Crowley stepped back, drawing a gun. Valor roared, planting himself between Elias and danger, forelegs thudding against the concrete, eyes blazing, not attacking, but defending, herding Elias back toward safety. His uncanny intelligence and restraint sent true fear through the men. One panicked, slipped, and dropped his pistol. Valor darted in, flipping the weapon away with his muzzle, then returned to Elias's side, forever the barrier between his human and harm. Within seconds, the warehouse was chaos. Shouts, curses, confusion. But through it all, the clearest image was this: a K9 triggered into action, but holding to his highest code, not to kill, only to protect. Valor's eyes had never been so fierce, alive with strength and compassion, not mindless rage. Elias, kneeling, arms aching, was protected absolutely. Tears welled in his eyes as he whispered, "Good boy, Valor. You're not a tool, you're a hero." For a moment, Crowley faltered, realizing, maybe for the first time, that all his conditioning had only ever scratched the surface. Beneath it lived a heart that could never be broken. Outside, police sirens wailed, red and blue lights flashing. Naya and backup had arrived, closing the net. But before humans could rescue each other, it was the awakening, courage, and mercy of one broken dog that performed the miracle. A warrior is only truly powerful when his strength is used to protect, not to destroy. And in Elias's eyes, and the tears shining in Valor's, everything they had endured was washed away, setting the stage for a new chapter of freedom and an unbreakable trust. Police sirens blared outside, mingling with the blue and red strobe lights that tore through the industrial night. Inside Warehouse 17B, chaos reigned. Crowley's henchmen screamed, Valor's fierce growls echoed, and Elias, on his knees beside the battered dog, knew these were the seconds that would decide everything. All that was left to rely on was each other, and the miracle of friendship. The steel door crashed open with a bang as the lock was blasted. Boots thundered across the floor, flashlights darting over crates and shadows. Naya appeared first, her face grim, gun drawn, SWAT at her back in body armor with shields and tactical weapons. Amid the uniforms was Juno, his young face pale and shaking, but his eyes burning with resolve. "Elias! Valor!" Nia shouted, her flashlight slicing through the gloom. "Here!" Elias rasped, his voice raw with emotion and pain. SWAT split instantly. One squad rushed for Elias and Valor. The other fanned out to surround Crowley's men as they tried to flee. Juno, though supposed to stay back, wormed his way in just in time to see a sight that almost brought him to tears. Valor, matted and bloodied, still stood tall in front of Elias, the unyielding shield of a guardian who never tires. "He saved him," Juno whispered, and hurried to help SWAT cut the ropes. The rescue team moved with precision, but Valor was the soul guiding them all. As the last binds fell away, the dog didn't dash for freedom. Instead, he pointed his nose toward the dark end of the warehouse, where faint cries and whimpers trembled from a rusted cage. Without waiting, Valor raced to the shadows, nosing gently at the iron bars. Nia and Juno followed, discovering other K9s, skinny, wild-eyed, collars marked with code numbers. In the deepest corner, a tiny yellow pup shivered, eyes wide in desperate plea. At its small yelp, Valor slipped his head into the cage, licking it gently, then gave 3 short barks, the K9 signal for safe to calm fellow dogs. Thanks to Valor's lead, the police found the keys, unlocking cages, setting everyone free. The other dogs hesitated, but when Valor strode ahead, tails began to wag, courage returning. The smallest pup, Crowley's last experiment, clung to Valor, crawling atop his back, refusing to let go of its lifeline. Elias staggered to his feet, trembling as he embraced Valor, amazed to find the dog still conscious, battered but awake. "We made it because of you, Valor," he whispered, choked with gratitude. Nia hugged Juno, her eyes softening for a fleeting moment, then barked orders for an organized withdrawal, leading the rescued dogs out of Crowley's darkness. Outside, the flashing patrol cars looked like the first dawn after a nightmare. Juno, cradling the little pup to his chest, promised, "I won't let anyone hurt you again. Elias, Nia, Valor, we're family now. All of us." And in that moment, no one would ever forget the sight. Valor, wounded but unbowed, leading the pack of rescued dogs, gently gripping the collar of the smallest one, his eyes shining with tears and joy. The whole team stepped out of the shadows together, beginning a journey of rebirth, not just for one soul, but for every heart shattered by violence, loneliness, and loss. Amid night and danger, the power of friendship, trust between people and dogs, of a pack reunited, became the miracle that saved them all. Valor, once again, was not just a warrior, but a guiding flame, lighting the way for anyone in need of hope. After the night of rescue, the first rays of dawn crept through the curtains of Elias's hospital room, lighting the white blanket where Valor lay curled up by the bed. No longer a cold clinic or a dark warehouse. This was now a space filled with warmth, voices, and the gentle breaths of a dog who'd survived the edge of death. Valor's wounds, thought impossible to heal after Crowley's brutality, began mending faster than anyone expected. Each day, Elias rose early, sitting on the floor to stroke Valor's fur, reading him journal notes, and talking in the simple language only two souls who had lived through darkness could truly understand. Dr. Geller marveled. "This dog has a will to live like no other, but I believe it's because he has you. He's not alone anymore." And in truth, it wasn't just Valor healing. Elias himself changed day by day. The nightmares, years of explosions, blood, and nameless loss began to soften. Each time he startled awake, all it took was placing a hand on Valor's head, feeling the steady rhythm of the dog's breath, and Elias could ground himself in the present, in a world of life, love, and hope. One morning, with the air brisk and bright, Juno slipped in with a breakfast tray, smiling quietly at the sight of Elias and Valor asleep together. Two old soldiers, both finally at peace. Juno himself had changed most of all. No longer the shy boy hiding behind an old hoodie, he now rolled up his sleeves, helping with everything at the rescue center, caring for abandoned dogs, and patiently playing and talking with children who came for therapy. "I've decided," Juno told Dr. Geller one afternoon in the garden. "I'm going to study animal therapy. I want kids who've been hurt like me to find joy and hope because of dogs like Valor." Juno's words spread like spring seeds. In the days that followed, more children, adults, and veterans came to the center, seeking healing, not from medicine alone, but from hesitant paw licks, kind eyes, and the honest wagging of tails. Elias watched it all, heart overflowing with gratitude. He knew, if not for Valor, the brave dog once abandoned, once just a tool, who crossed the line between life and death to protect a friend, he would never have found himself again. They had healed, day by day, from both sides, from wounds deep and cracks once thought unfixable, and the dream of resurrection was no longer distant. It was happening here, in this small house, with every look of trust and every gentle step of human and dog, side by side, always walking toward the light. From the dream of healing wounded souls, just a few months later, a truly special day arrived. The opening of Valor Center, the place where Elias, Valor, Nia, Juno, and the whole community turned a miracle into reality. No one would ever forget that morning. Tucson's sky was unusually gentle. Blue and white ribbons fluttered in the breeze. The scent of fresh grass hung in the air, and the joyful barking of dogs rang out across the new center's lawn. A place once just a forgotten scar on the edge of the city. now transformed into a beacon of faith and hope. Elias stood on a small wooden stage, Valor at his side, the shepherd who had walked through hell and returned to the light. His coat had nearly grown back, with only a few faded scars on his legs and chest, and those brown eyes now shone with a gentle, intelligent, steadfast light, more powerful than any promise. The crowd pressed close. Neighbors, veterans, families who'd adopted rescue dogs, Dr. Geller, Juno in his crisp new uniform, and Naya, beaming proudly like a big sister watching her siblings come into their own. For the ribbon-cutting moment, it was Valor who took the very first step through the gates. He didn't charge ahead, but walked forward, head held high and sure, as if to show everyone. Even if you were once a victim, abandoned, beaten down by fear, today you can stand as a symbol of rebirth, faith, and courage. After the ceremony, people and dogs toured the campus together. The therapy rooms, the rehabilitation field, the bright, airy kennels. Each room bore a name inspired by their real journey. Titan's Memory Room, Garden of Hope, Juno's Dream Zone, and the largest, the Valor Hall, displayed photos of dogs who'd overcome their wounds and become themselves again. Children crowded around Valor, whispering their secrets into his ear. One little boy, once mute from trauma, had, after just a few weeks with Valor, dared to go up on stage, hug the dog, and burst out laughing. Juno led the small dog Valor had rescued, raising his arm and cheering. "We're a family now!" Nia stood at the end of the hall, plans for expanding the center in her hand, quietly watching Elias. He stood, reflective, in the flow of people, but the smile on his lips was no longer the forced one from long ago. Now it was pride, seeing so many beings, so many hearts once lost, gathering here, barking, laughing, and setting out together on a new beginning. That afternoon, sunlight stretched long across the grass. Valor lay in the center of the lawn, letting children take turns stroking his fur, while other rescued dogs lay close by. Calm, safe, steadfast. Maybe no speech could capture what that day meant. The true lesson was in Valor himself. Every step, every look, every comforting gesture for dogs and people who had once given up hope. He was the greatest living lesson of all, about hope that never fades, patience, and unconditional friendship. Valor Center wasn't just a shelter for forgotten animals, but a home for people who'd lost faith in themselves. And at the center of it all, Valor, the dog who'd walked through the deepest darkness, had become a guiding light, a living symbol of life's greatest miracle. One life, one loving heart, can change an entire community. When the ribbons faded under the late afternoon sun, life at Valor Center returned to its gentle rhythm. Kids' footsteps echoing, soft dog barks along the halls, the scent of fresh-cut grass drifting from the backyard. Everyone was busy, rehabilitating, caring, training, like all wounds and losses had been washed away for good. But healing, sometimes, is just the start of a new circle. That evening, Elias sat quietly on the front steps, Valor resting his head on his knee, both of them watching their new friends, kids and dogs, out in the yard. Valor was older now. In those deep brown eyes was a calm, patient watchfulness, a crownless leader keeping silent vigil. Just then, Juno came running, breathless. "Elias, there's a new dog. Really strange. I think he was a K9, just like Valor." Elias nodded, following Juno to the quarantine room. In the far corner, a thin, scarred shepherd huddled, trembling, eyes blurred with tears, staring at the wall. Every time someone passed with a flashlight, or there was a loud noise, the dog would bolt upright, clawing at the door, desperate to escape. On his left thigh, a faded tattoo, just like the code they once found on Valor. Elias knelt slowly, careful not to cast his shadow over the new arrival, hands open on the floor. Valor stood by his side, not rushing or intimidating, but waiting patiently, a rare, quiet kindness. Under the soft golden light, the two dogs looked at each other for a long time, from a place of fear toward the fragile light of the present. The new dog whimpered as the flashlight flicked past, then gasped every time the door clanged. Elias began softly repeating the same words he'd once used for Valor. "It's okay now. You're safe here. We've all been scared, but you'll learn to trust the light again." Juno watched, eyes shining with tears. Maybe he realized the circle of wounds and abandonment will always have another turn, and the work of healing is never really finished. But just as Valor once needed a hand to trust again, today another soul needed that same hope. Elias glanced at Valor, giving him a gentle smile. "Maybe, every time we save a life like yours, we save ourselves a little more." He stroked Valor's head, then turned to the new dog, patiently waiting by his side, ready to let comfort come at its own pace. The Tucson sky was studded with stars. Under that faint light, Valor raised his head, ears pricked, a silent promise. If there is still suffering tomorrow, this dog will rise, ready to protect, to offer trust, to pass on the courage that survived the darkness. In that moment, pain, memory, and hope merged as one. The healing circle will go on. Wherever there is trust, there is a chance to change and a flame of hope for the most fragile. On the steps of Valor Center, beneath gentle starlight, the journey of healing never truly ends. It's the call of hearts that never give up. To save one life is to save the world, again and again. From the darkest corners of life to the radiant sunrise at Valor Center, Valor and Elias have proved. With one trusting look, an open embrace, and a heart that never quits, any wound, no matter how deep, can heal. Their story isn't just their miracle, but a beacon of hope for every soul who's ever been left behind. Have you ever seen a dog or a person change your life with love and loyalty? Share your story in the comments below so we can spread this healing together. If Valor's journey moved your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring tales. Thank you for believing in miracles that begin with a look, a little dog, and a hope that never fades.